Thank you so much for tuning into the Church Dropout Podcast. My name is Alan. I'm the host. Church Dropout is a podcast. We talk about issues, topics, and teachings related to faith, life, and culture in ways that are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always insightful. If you have not already, please like, rate, and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below. Keep the conversation moving forward. And so I am joined by the co-host,
Lisa.
What's up?
What's up?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Why are you talking so fast? Why are you interjecting like really quickly after I say something like really fast? It's like, hello, hi, how you doing? Good.
I just had an energy drink.
That probably explains it. All right, so there has been some recent allegations against Bible teacher Dr. Michael Brown, popular Bible teacher who's been accused of, I guess at this point we just say accusations. I don't think it's SA at this point, right? Is it?
No. They're still investigating.
Okay, so I guess what we say inappropriate. Some allegedly inappropriate behavior towards someone that he was close to during or around the Brownsville revival, I believe it was, and when he was a part of they were a part of the fire school ministry. And we'll read a small article that kind of explains some of that. But what I want to talk about generally is not so much about the situation itself, as again, that's an unfolding situation. Prayers up to all who are involved in this specific situation. Dr. Michael Brown is a huge public figure. Obviously, that has an effect on how the body or how people view Jesus. It's just an unfortunate situation altogether. So prayers to everyone that's involved, the people the alleged victims at this particular point, Dr. Brown, his family, all of that stuff, just a lot going on there, right? But I don't necessarily want to talk about the situation. To me, I think this should ignite, to some degree, a crucial conversation or discussion around, I guess, the intersection of spirituality and accountability, especially during things like revivals or even in communities where there's this high euphoric experience of spirituality, and how this happens in those specific environments, how that environment can be a breeding ground for this type of activity. You understand what I'm saying? Where people can be victimized and even predators can, I guess, take advantage in these specific types of environments. And so I kind of want to talk about that. I have some things that I think, would maybe give some reason to why these things can happen in those types of environments. Right. But before we get there, I guess we can just kind of read this article and maybe process a little bit of the article, and then we can get into the things I'm talking about.
Okay.
That makes sense? All right. So here we go.
All right. Following sexual misconduct allegations, Michael Brown to take time off from public ministry.
I guess I should say this is, good job, Lisa. I guess I should say that this is the second follow-up on Julie Roy's website to her initial story. She actually broke the story about Dr. Michael Brown. At least that's where we first heard it. I think she did break it. But this is the second article that was written, just him saying he's taking a break from ministry. That also explains a little bit about what's going on, because there's some other things too that I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that have also been brought up in this conversation. And so let's go ahead and read and we'll go from there.
All right. Following allegations of sexual misconduct, Messianic Jewish scholar Michael Brown is taking time off from his public ministry, according to Brown's ministry, The Line of Fire. We have strongly encouraged Mike that he does no public ministry, said Scott Volk, board member for the Line of Fire, in a statement to the Roy's Report, TRR. He's canceled speaking engagements for the months of November and December, and from my understanding, he normally writes numerous articles a week. He's not doing that. Brown's board said it did not know if Brown would also take a break from his radio and podcast ministry. TRR reported Monday that a woman using the pseudonym Aaron said in 2002, when she was 21 and Brown was in his 40s, Brown crossed several physical boundaries with her. On multiple occasions, Brown held her hand, smacked her bottom with his hand, and kissed her on the lips, she said. The woman was working as a secretary at the time, and Brown was leading and building Fire School of Ministry, a ministry birthed from the Brownsville revival of the 1990s. In a previous statement to TRR, Brown said he used a lack of judgment in his relationship with Aaron, but did nothing sexual. Last month, the Line of Fire's board hired attorneys Mitchell, Stein, Carey, and Chapman, MSCC, to conduct a third-party investigation. But according to its website, MSCC has worked as defense attorneys for Fortune 500 companies and for college students accused of sexual misconduct. Advocates raised concerns online about MSCC's ability to investigate allegations of abuse, and Aaron told TRR she would not participate. In response, the board is considering hiring a different entity because it wants an impartial investigator with whom Aaron will engage, said Jonathan Burness, spokesperson for the Line of Fire board. Our desire from the beginning was to find the truth, and the hiring of the law firm was not in any way to vindicate Michael Brown, said Burness. At the suggestion of Ron Cantor, president of Chelanu TV, the Line of Fire board considered hiring Firefly, but the organization isn't available until February, Burness said. Firefly is a third party that is investigating alleged sexual misconduct by Mike Bickle, founder of the International House of Prayer, Kansas City, IHOP KC.
Do you think we need to read the whole article?
It's a lot. So in what you're wanting to hone in on, probably we should skip to So no.
Okay. Because I think this gives us maybe a good understanding of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Right. So Dr. Brown is accused of, and we'll have the whole article, pinned, or you can go to the Roy's Report to get it. Mm-hmm. But basically, Dr. Brown is accused of some, inappropriate activity. And he's, obviously saying that it's not true. Mm-hmm. He may have acted unwisely in that situation. However, the accusations aren't true. Mm-hmm. And this was some time ago. Mm-hmm. This was, when somewhere around the 1990s, mm-hmm. when all of this, maybe after the 1990s.
Yeah, I think they said like 2005.
Yeah, it was like 24 years ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. So this happened some 20 something years ago. Obviously it's now coming out. And again, it's a big situation. So I do want to talk about like why in these types of environments this can happen, right? Not saying that it did happen here, because all of this is alleged at this particular point. Although he did say that he may have acted with poor judgment. He said there was nothing sexual. But I think if you were doing the things that,
it was stated.
Yeah, kissing someone on the lips, tapping them on the bottom, somebody that's not your child, not your daughter, somebody that's an adult, even if it was your child and your daughter, or even if it was an adult child of yours or anything like that, it's just weird behavior. And I'm not sure how that could be seen as not being sexual or anything like that.
Right.
But anyway, I do want to talk about just kind of how these types of things can happen, especially in situations where there's spiritual authority, revival-ish type situations. And then, definitely in these high spiritual euphoric environments, why abuse can be so rampant in there. But there's a couple things in the article or in this situation that I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on. and you share whatever thoughts you have in this, so let me ask that first. Do you have any kind of thoughts? You read the whole article, anything that you want to address or talk about?
Well, it's always concerning to me if like the article says that there's a comment in here. I haven't read that part yet, but that it was dealt with, some years ago, then that always kind of makes me wonder, why is it brought up now if it was already dealt with? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's concerning too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it would all depend on how that specific situation was dealt with.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And was it dealt with on both parties?
Right.
Because sometimes one party can deal with it, but, was it dealt with as a healing process together? Sometimes that's needed.
Yeah. It's a complex situation. Mm-hmm. And like I said, because that situation is still unfolding, there's not much that could be said without speculating on either side.
Right.
So, but I do think there's definitely things here that can be learned and even talked about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a couple things just jumped out to me. So as a result of this, there has been a lot of discussion around something called the Billy Graham rule. Have you ever heard of that?
No, never.
Okay. The Billy Graham rule is that Billy Graham, famous evangelist, never met with the woman alone. Mm. Like he would never meet with the woman alone. Mm-hmm. Even if in a public place, he would, make sure that there was somebody there, different things of that sort. Mm-hmm. And so it's been called the Billy Graham rule, right? Mm-hmm. So, guys have been saying like, this is why it's important to have the Billy Graham rule. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'm totally okay with that if somebody wants to live by that, right? Mm-hmm. I think we got to be careful in how we state the Billy Graham rule, that we don't make women the problem. Mm-hmm. You understand? So Billy Graham's not going to meet with the woman alone because is he protecting himself or from his own desires, or is he protecting himself from women? Like that's their desire to meet with him, is to take down his ministry, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that we got to be careful on how we do that. If we're just using it as a point of wisdom, great, right? But there's something interesting to me about the Billy Graham rule, and I was kind of thinking about this because the rule is that you wouldn't meet with anybody of the opposite gender, alone, male or female. But in a culture where we deal with same-sex attraction, how far do we go with this thing? Like, okay, but it's okay to meet alone with the same gender. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's the problem with sometimes with some of these rules is that, like, I don't know, it just feels like rules are great. Fences are great. We want to have fences, but how far do we go with this?
Right.
And is that something that we're even thinking about? Do you see what I'm saying? As if that's not a reality in our own culture.
Right.
That two people of the same gender be meeting. And then, so does a pastor not meet with anybody? Like, do you not meet with anybody alone? You know what I'm saying? And we got to define what alone is, right? Every pastor's office should have a window. Like, it should never be like Mike Bickle had a double lock, metal door. You know what I mean? No windows. Nobody had a key or access. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Like, that's just the craziest thing in the world,
right? Very.
Definitely got to, put some protection up and different things of that sort. But how far do we go with this? You know what I mean? Like, if we're going to say that it's better to be safe than to be sorry, well, in a world where same-sex attraction is very much so a part of the reality, and it's always been, but a part of the reality of where we are. Yeah. Then what do we do? Like, is it wise to meet with anyone? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. And I'm trying, as you're talking, I'm very visual. So I'm like trying to visualize how that looks. And, I understand and like you said, same sex as well, but I understand the meeting one-on-one nowadays. I feel like, it probably was going on then too. When we say nowadays it's just, we're a little bit more
we have the
aware of it. Yeah. but I feel like maybe, it's just hard because you're dealing with, it's on both sides. You're dealing with someone that is a man, like not saying that is wrong. You're dealing with man. When I say man, I'm not meaning man. I'm meaning,
you're talking about mankind.
Yes. You know what I mean? Right. And so you're dealing with, we're still in a sinful world. We're still in, so anything can happen.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I do think that it's smart, to protect yourself as far as, and maybe if that means, even if that means meeting with the same gender, maybe there needs to be, a third party that's, there, that's like an assistant or something like that, that is trustworthy, but it's just.
Yeah. I just think like the conversation goes beyond just these. I think we need to carry the conversation beyond just these rules. Like, you know what I mean? We're trying to kind of put these boundaries around it, but there's a deeper conversation that needs to happen, right? Like I said, that boundary. Okay, so what if my boss is a female, and I have to meet with her for a one-on-one in her office? Do I say, no? See, like some of these things are only. There's only certain environments that these things are enforced. How far does that go?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, I just think that it's a bigger conversation, and I understand the sentiment. You know what I mean? But a part of this, I think, is just church culture to a large degree, and how we do things. Like, why are we meeting? Why is, you know what I mean? Like, why do you need to meet with someone one-on-one? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there ever really a case for that? I understand. What's that called? I don't want to say secrecy. That's not the right word, but confidentiality and different things of that sort. But accountability at times overrides confidentiality, right? That's just the reality, right?
Right.
I'm just saying, like, it's a. We live in a very particular time, and that Billy Graham rule may not be just for, I don't know why we assume that if opposite sexes are meeting, that there's the potential for temptation to happen. It could be the same thing for same. So, you know what I mean? So, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. It's just very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting. The second thing I wanted to bring up is just these investigations by outside parties, right? So they're having an investigation, Michael Brown and the elders or the board members on his ministry, and they're having an outside team investigate the situation. Okay. Or an independent investigation, right? And I was just thinking about this, like, and this is fairly common in these types of situations where there's this call for an independent investigation. So if a church, a ministry gets into a situation like this, there's a call for an independent investigation. And I was kind of thinking, like, the trust level of the church is completely shot.
Yeah.
For people to believe that something is dealt with and handled, there has to be an outside investigation, independent,
right,
to deal with that. And I get why, you know what I mean? But that has to grieve God.
Yeah.
That we've gotten to the point where the way the church is actually set up, that is supposed to be set up to walk through these types of things, is overlooked because we need to bring someone from the outside in order to do it, because we don't trust the leadership, because that leadership might be too loyal to the leader.
Right.
And that's happened, right? And so we need an independent community to come in order for the public to trust that there was something actually really done in that specific situation. And I think this just shows how lost the modern church is today.
Yeah.
Where, God sets up a community where there's accountability built into the community at all levels, where elders are not above accountability and leaders are not above accountability, but we've set it up in such a way that leaders can hide and not feel accountable. So the only way to really get justice or to really get to the truth, we got to have someone outside come in and investigate. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is where the church is today.
Right.
That not the body of Christ has no faith in justice and truth rising up in these particular situations.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? To the point where, outside investigators need to come in and kind of find the truth.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or make sure that it's happening. Now I get it in this situation. It was a long time ago, all of that type stuff. Like you said, it supposedly had been dealt with, but maybe not fully, whatever that is. So, there's some other stories out there where individuals who know Mike Brown have contacted him and, he said certain things to them and they're like, which leads them to believe certain parts are true. Like all types of stuff is happening. So I get it. He didn't tell his board. He never told the school, nothing like that. So yeah, it's a complicated situation. I'm just saying like, it's just really telling where we are today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That a team of pastors couldn't stand up and say, we've investigated this, we've looked into this, and we're dealing with it. We're dealing with both the victim,
right.
We're dealing with both Michael Brown, and the public would say, nope, no, we need somebody from the outside to come in and do this. That's where we are today. You see what I'm saying? Like the public would be like, no, they know Michael Brown. They have a history with Michael Brown. Like, or no, why would they cover? So we actually need to go outside the church for the church to judge at the church because we can't trust the church.
And I think because there's been so many, and I'm sure plenty of small churches, but I know a lot of the churches that are in the limelight, there have been cover-ups. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what leads people to not trust, is because they knew certain things was going on or, and swept it under the rug and never dealt with it or so-called dealt with it, but didn't really deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was no stepping down. There was no time to what's that when you kind of just go away and
you're
like a sabbatical or you know what I'm saying? Just something where it's just you're really dealing with that and trying to renew yourself or you know.
Yeah. Actually, absolutely.
You don't hear or see any of that. You know what I mean? And so I can see where, the trust is just like, I don't trust,
absolutely.
Even though this is what a board's supposed to be there for. The board is supposed to be like, hey, it's really, I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought the board is supposed to be the ones that kind of make a lot of the decisions. The pastor doesn't get to really make decisions. It's usually has to be ran by the board and okay by the board. Yeah. But if the board is okaying everything for the pastor, you know what I mean? Then who's running the board? Is it the board or the pastor?
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, it's the
pastor.
It's the pastor or the lead pastor, and that's why, and that's what I'm saying. That's why people don't trust it. And I get it. It's just not supposed to be that way. Right. And again, it goes back to the system of church and how we've jacked this thing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how, just how we've moved away from biblical community to such a degree that the church just has no credibility. Not only, and I'm not normalizing any of this, it to some degree, because we live we're all affected by sin's presence. We should expect things to happen.
Right.
The problem that we have is that how things are being dealt with is not happening. It's not being dealt with sufficiently. And that's where people are outraged and concerned, right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
But it's just telling to where we are today that we need accountability outside of the community to come in and to hold ministries and churches accountable that are supposed to be held accountable by the community within or by that leader themselves.
Right.
But that the process by which God has set up doesn't work. And let me say this, it doesn't work. The reason why a lot of these things don't work is because we've taken these things principally and they just don't work in the type of communities that we have. It's hard to have an elder community that leads the church when you got 10, 15 guys trying to lead a congregation of 15 or 1,500 to 15,000 people or whatever, right? And even if it's 15,000 and you have a board of 40 or 50 guys, that like, there's no way that accountability can be produced in that environment.
Right.
You're just exercising what the Bible says, but the fruit of what is supposed to be done can't happen by the nature of the community itself.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting dynamic. And, again, this also just flows into parachurch ministries too. Like, but that's a whole different discussion. These ministries that function outside of the church. But anyway, yeah, it's crazy. And I just think that, this whole investigation thing that's needed, and I understand it's the world we live in and it's where we're at. But I also think it's a sign of how far the church has gotten off its course to the point where not even the body of Christ trusts the body to be able to deal with these things in a way to bring about justice. In order for there to be an inkling of trust, we need someone independent to deal with that. We need someone that we don't know, that they don't know, so that we can trust that this is, and that's crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I just want to mention 7 things that I think, and I know that sounds like a lot after we've been talking for about 15 minutes. But I think, again, like there are certain environments that I think are conducive to spiritual abuses like this. And why do these things, happen, and why do people wait? And why are people not, maybe why they don't come out when these things, right, when these things happen, or, like there's certain things that I think the environment creates that keeps people from being able to do that. I don't want to say keeps people, that encourages them to not do that, but it's also just the environment itself. So I just want to mention some things and, briefly, and we could talk about them. I don't know. Like now I'm thinking like, should we just do a separate video on this or something? Like,
I don't know what your 7 things are, but it is kind of.
Okay, so I'm just going for it. Okay. So the first one is just the power dynamics. You know, in these types of situation, where the leaders are, held on such a high pedestal, especially kind of in these, like around the time of the Brownsville revival. Even after the fire school of ministry, these types of things. And I don't want to, I'm saying those things specifically, but I'm not saying that this is what happened there. I'm just saying that where leaders are blown up and the power dynamics are skewed in the favor of leadership, then, this is something that happens as a result. And this is why the church has to fight against power. It has to. We have to throw off this idea of power, especially when it comes to leaders and how much power leaders actually have, right? They're no different from the rest of the congregation. No leader is above the accountability of the congregation. Yeah. And yet we have leaders who are functioning outside of that. And because of the power dynamics, they're able to do these types of things or get away with these type things or get a pass because of who they are. Right. And this is why these things tend to happen. It's because of the power dynamics. The second thing is just emotional vulnerability, right? The heightened emotional state in these types of environments, right, can be easily manipulated. Like in these environments where there is kind of a, euphoric atmosphere where it's based on a lot of emotion. Yeah. then it just leaves the door open to be emotionally vulnerable or emotionally manipulated, right? So these intense spiritual, experiences, right, can cloud judgment and weaken personal boundaries. You see what I'm saying, right? And so we got to be careful, right? Just in these types of environments, just emotional vulnerability plays a huge part in why these things happen. You just lower your guards because of, the emotional experience that you're having. Right. Just lack of oversight, again, like kind of going back to what you said, that there's oversight, but there's really not anyone overseeing that. This happened with Mars Hill, and this is not a highly euphoric environment in terms of its spiritualness, but this was a reformed community. But Mars Hill with Mark Driscoll, they had a board. They had a board to oversee the board, and he had control of all of that. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a lack of oversight, really, and especially in these kind of revival atmospheres and stuff like that, where they're just people who are pouring in. There's just leaders from all over the place, and there's no real head or accountability. It's just all about the experience. It's a breeding ground for people to be hurt. You know what I mean?
Agree. Yeah.
I'm going to change it to 6 because I'm going to skip one of these. All right. Okay. So, fear of retribution. See, victims often fear, retaliation. You know what I mean? And so, they fear being shunned from the community. They fear, being looked at differently than the individual that they may be even, accusing of this. These environments, like you got to look at your environment and look at the people who speak up and look at how they're treated. The people who don't go along to get along. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that causes people to have this herd mentality where they just kind of agree to it. And usually when people are being abused and stuff like that, they fear retribution. They fear. And it's not just getting in trouble. It could be just being ostracized from the community. It could just be not spoken to by those individuals anymore because they've placed such a high premium on that relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here's one that I think is more common, but we don't often talk about it, but divine retributive anxiety, right? Divine retributive anxiety. Like sometimes people have an issue speaking up and speaking out because they fear God is going to be upset with them because they're talking against the movement or they're talking against God's work that he's doing there. Do you understand what I'm saying? God is doing a powerful work here. God is, he's moving here, right? And they are like, man, if I say something, am I going against God here?
I remember.
And this is all, I'm sorry, babe.
No,
and this is also manipulation on the leadership part because that's how it's often explained. I've been in situations not like this where it's like the mission, overrides any wrongdoing. You see what I'm saying? Like, oh no, but we got to keep, or this is right. So sometimes it's a divine, their fear is that God is going to hold them accountable to something because they've ruined this actual work, ruined this individual's great ministry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say. That reminds me of IHOP KC because it was just a lot of, not wanting to affect what God was doing in this ministry. You know what I mean? And if you went against it, this is what you were doing.
Absolutely.
You were affecting God's ministry.
Absolutely. Like in that situation, people were like, you're going to ruin. We've been praying for Israel 24/7 for this many years. And if you take down this person, it's going to undo all of the things that, and so people get to a place where they fear like, God, I don't want to be hindering your work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is where just bad theology, it steps in, right? Sometimes God blesses mess for his name, not for the sake of the people who are doing it.
Right.
But because there are other things that are at stake here, or God is just moving through that. He uses imperfect people, sometimes sinful people, to do his work. Well, all the time sinful people, but to do his work. But that doesn't mean that God somehow is overlooking the mess. But people can be afraid that they're going to stop the move of God if they say something. You see what I'm saying? So think about this like in a revival setting where there's supposedly all these acts of God happening and people are experiencing this great move of God, and you are a person who's been abused in the midst of this. You know what I mean? And you go and you say something, and it's like, now, people are like, what are you doing? Like, do you understand what's happening here? Do you understand what's at stake here? You know what I mean? And it's like, right. And so that pushes people into hiding, and to suck it up, you know what I mean? And it's unfortunate. And the last thing is it's just a misinterpretation of spiritual experiences, right? So, some individuals may confuse emotional and spiritual encounters with consent, right? Leading to inappropriate behaviors that are mistakenly justified within the religious framework. And that's kind of, here where all of these acts that a person could have been doing, the tapping on the backside, the kissing, it's misinterpreting like spiritual, experiences, or mistaking those things as spiritual experiences because I'm close to this person or this right, or who this person is, or anything like that, right? That leads to inappropriate, behaviors, right? That are sometimes justified by the person who's doing it or by religious, by the religious framework, right? We've seen this happen like in several situations where, individuals were kind of manipulated, by that. You know what I mean? Like the actions are inappropriate, but because of the spiritual experience, those things aren't seen that way. And the person themselves question it within their own heart, but just see it as a part of this ministry experience, so to speak, right? Like, yeah, that's weird. Even in this situation, some people who spoke out were just like, yeah, we noticed it. We just, I don't know, it was weird that we thought about it, but we just didn't connect the two because, we knew Michael Brown and, like, you see what I'm saying? And so, but then also, so I don't know. It's a difficult situation. You know what I mean? But these are just some things that I was thinking about as I was kind of pondering the situation and, why to some degree these things keep happening, but then also why they happen in certain types of environments, especially high spiritual, euphoric type, situations where the spirit is high. You know what I mean? That often clouds judgment. And, and almost allows for people to be able to, misbehave, behave inappropriately because of the spiritualness of the actual, the supposed spiritualness of the actual environment itself. So, but anyway, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
I cut it short because I was like, man, this could be long. I don't even know how long we've been going, but anyway, like I said, prayers for everyone that's been involved.
Yes, definitely.
It's unfortunate. And like I said, it's going to affect a ton of people, and it's already affected a ton of people. So pray for those who have to bear this, deal with this, and all of this being done in the public, which just brings another layer to it, and so just praying for everyone who's involved and will be affected by this particular situation. But that's it. Any final?
Nope. That's it. I was just thinking, I was trying to think, just when you were saying to pray, definitely to pray for clarity, you know what I mean? So that people are not confused or not sure which way, you know what I mean? But just to have that clarity of, once the investigation is done, that it's final. You know what I mean? That there's that trust that this is what it is, and that, either side or both sides, come together, or, it's dealt with in the appropriate way,
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimate justice comes from the Lord.
Right.
And then also just being sober. I just, sometimes when these things come up, people, for whatever reason, sometimes it's because they've maybe overly trusted that individual, they side, or because they themselves have been hurt, they undertrust individuals. Right. And, I just, think we all need to, like you said, we need to press into the Lord, just kind of lay our anxieties down on him, or cast our cares on him, as he would say, and trust him for ultimate justice, and then weigh the situation as it is. Move from there. Thank you so much for tuning into the Church Dropout Podcast. That's it. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, drop a comment below. We'd love to hear what you'd have to say. So that's it. Thank you so much. God bless.